Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Money in the Bank review. So, Money in the Bank this year was from the WWE PC and also the WWE Headquarters. PC, of course, from Orlando, and Headquarters, the WWE Headquarters from Stamford, Connecticut. And this year's Money in the Bank, I thought it was a entertaining show, in my opinion. Was it a great show by any means? No, but it was still entertaining. And another thing that I liked about the show was the pacing of the show was, pretty decent. Where WWE ended the pay-per-view by 9:30, so they didn't even go over 3 hours or 4 hours. So I was happy about that. But overall, this year's Money in the Bank show, like I said, entertaining show. Wasn't a great show by any means though, but it was entertaining and fun. So, but let's get started with the review. I'm going to start with the match that was on the Kickoff show, which I didn't get to see, but it was Jeff Hardy versus Cesaro. You had Jeff Hardy end up defeating Cesaro. So, but like I said, didn't get a chance to see it because when the kickoff was on, I was still at work. So, but made it out of work once the pay-per-view began at 7 o'clock. So, but there you go. Jeff Hardy ended up winning the match by defeating Cesaro. And then we had the regular matches. So the pay-per-view kicked off with the Fatal 4-Way for the Smackdown Tag Team Championship. And it was the New Day versus The Miz and John Morrison versus the Forgotten Sons versus Lucha House Party. And this was a decent match, but pretty much it was a little bit of what we saw on Smackdown on Friday, but it was a 8-man tag. But you had Kofi Kingston and Gran Metalik start off the match. Kofi ended up delivering a splash on Metalik. He ended up delivering a back elbow to Gran Metalik. But he then ended up taking a enziguri. And Kofi ended up delivering some kicks to Gran Metalik. Wesley Blake ended up tagging himself in. He ended up knocking down, a few guys off the ring apron. And he ended up tagging in Cutler. Cutler ended up delivering a backbreaker along with Blake on Gran Metalik. Metalik then ended up hitting a springboard back elbow on both Cutler and Blake. John Morrison ended up coming in, ends up taking a drop kick. And we had Gran Metalik end up heading to the top along with Morrison. And this was awesome right here. This point in the match, both Morrison and Metalik were on the top. And they end up delivering a Spanish fly. Well, Morrison ends up delivering a Spanish fly along with Gran Metalik from the top. And they took out everyone on the floor, which that was really awesome. So you had Grand Metalik trying to fight off, and Cutler ended up coming in. He ended up stomping away at Grand Metalik, and he delivered a back elbow, went for the cover. Metalik ended up kicking out at 2. So, you had the New Day. They were keeping off of the ring apron, and Forgotten Sons were beating up on Metalik. So Morrison ended up coming in. Lindsay Dorado ended up getting into the match. Dorado ended up hitting a springboard moonsault on John Morrison, and he went for the cover. Miz ended up coming in and breaking it up. Dorado then ended up hitting a drop kick, which he turned straight into a moonsault on Morrison, and he went for the pin. Morrison ended up kicking out. Dorado ended up going for another pin, but it got broken up. And at the end of the match, you had Kofi end up doing a splash out to the floor, and Metalik end up going to take out Big E, but Big E ended up catching Metalik. Kofi then ended up nailing a Trouble in Paradise on Lindsay Dorado, and then that gave Big E the advantage of the match, and he ended up hitting the big ending on Grand Metalik. So Big E went for the cover. There you go. The New Day end up winning the match, still retaining the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. And I forgot to mention, there was one point in the match where you had Morrison end up taking a Hurricanrana from Metalik off of the top, which looked awesome. All in all, it was an entertaining, decent Fatal 4-Way match. And of course, the New Day still end up retaining the titles. And then we went to Lacey Evans. And this was filmed earlier in the day. And Lacey Evans ended up saying that this Money in the Bank match is made for her to win. The most unique Money in the Bank ladder match. Which, god-awful saying. And she ends up mentioning about being in the military and that she has learned the way to win, and that the only way to win is through a good plan. She ended up saying that she's learned the entire layout of the WWE Headquarters, and that she will make her way to the roof and get the briefcase. And she ended up telling Bayley, this woman's right is ready anytime. That was a little promo from Lacey Evans. And then we went to Charlie Caruso. Charlie Caruso was backstage. She was interviewing Drew McIntyre about his match against Seth Rollins. And Charlie Caruso ended up asking McIntyre about possibly being an underdog. So McIntyre ends up giving it to Seth that he has achieved a lot. He ended up saying that he has heart. McIntyre ended up saying that he has heart, and he'll be damned if he loses the WWE Championship tonight. McIntyre ended up saying that Seth hasn't learned how to close his mouth, and that he plans on doing the world a favor and shutting Seth Rollins up. So that was the little interview with Drew McIntyre. It was a decent interview with McIntyre. And throughout the night, we had promos for The Undertaker's documentary, which was the first part, which was Chapter 1 of that documentary, which I did watch after Money in the Bank, and it was a awesome first part to the documentary. Really enjoyed it. But if you guys haven't checked out the first part of the Undertaker documentary, it's called Undertaker: The Last Ride. Definitely give it a watch. The second part won't be up until May 17th. So that's when the next part of the documentary is going to air. And then we had R-Truth. R-Truth ended up coming out, and he does his what's up, and he tells the WWE Universe to make some noise, which is funny because there is no one there at the PC. So I like R-Truth. He's hilarious, and he's trying to get people to like cheer when there was nobody there, which I laughed at. But when R-Truth was saying make some noise, and it was silent, you could just hear a pin drop there, because that was how silent it came off on TV. With no crowd being there or no audience being there. So you had MVP. God. MVP ended up getting on the mic, and this was announced yesterday that R-Truth was going to take on MVP. I'm like, why was this announced? This was WWE once again taking superstars' names out of a hat and just throwing them onto the pay-per-view card. That's what it basically was. So MVP came out, he got on the mic, and he ended up asking R-Truth what he's doing. And then Truth ended up saying that he's just balling. So R-Truth ends up taunting MVP. He goes, balling. And then he says, oh, that was 2 shots. Oh, that was 4 shots where he just going, where R-Truth was just going, ballin'. And then he moved 6 steps back, did ballin'. It was funny though. I was laughing hysterically at R-Truth here. And MVP ended up having enough of that. And, he goes to get ready for the match. And he ends up telling R-Truth that, he knows someone who can, destroy him or beat him. And out came Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley ended up heading down to the ring. Lashley ended up telling MVP that he's got this. So MVP ended up leaving the ring. So we had R-Truth versus Bobby Lashley, which, thank God, we didn't have to see MVP move in the ring. Thank God. So we had R-Truth versus Bobby Lashley. This was a squash match. Bobby Lashley ended up winning in like 2 minutes. So R-Truth ended up trying to get away from Bobby Lashley. Lashley ended up snatching him. Hits a shoulder thrust to R-Truth in the corner. Bobby Lashley ended up launching Truth across the ring. Ended up delivering a spine buster to R-Truth. Lashley tried to go for a suplex, but R-Truth ended up reversing it, and he ended up kicking. Lashley. He tried to go for a scissors kick, but Lashley moved out of the way, and Lashley then ended up hitting a spear to Truth, went for the cover. There you go. Bobby Lashley ended up winning the match. But very quick match. It was a squash match. So easy win for Bobby Lashley. So then after Lashley versus R-Truth, we went to a promo from Corbin. Yeah. Corbin ended up running down on his achievements that he had. And he ended up saying that tonight he's going to claim his second Money in the Bank victory. Which, God help us all, if that happened. So Corbin ended up saying that he knows the risk is worth the reward when he becomes Mr. Money in the Bank. Yeah, so that was what Corbin had to say. And then we went to Kayla Braxton. Kayla Braxton was backstage. She was talking with Bayley and Sasha. And Kayla ended up bringing up Sasha messing up Lacey Evans in the tag match that we saw on Smackdown, which Bayley and Sasha end up losing. And Kayla ended up wondering if Bayley blamed Sasha for the match. And Bayley ended up saying that she never blamed Sasha for the loss. And that she's going to show everyone why she's the most dominant women's champion, out there. So, pretty much, that was basically that. Bayley and Sasha end up making their way out. And then we had Tamina end up making her way out. And so then we had the match, Bayley versus Tamina for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And, Greg Hamilton ended up introducing them. And when Greg Hamilton announced Tamina, we saw Bayley and Sasha booing on Tamina, which I thought was funny. But the match started off, and the match itself, it was it was okay match. But Bayley ended up taunting Tamina, and she ended up saying that she's not going to win a title by just being nice. So Tamina ended up dropping Bayley. Tamina ended up beating up on Bayley. Bayley ended up going to the top rope, and Tamina ended up asking what her problem is. And so Bayley ended up apologizing. Tamina ended up backing away. She let Bayley get back into the ring. Tamina then went for a body slam on Bayley, which Bayley ended up rolling out of the ring. And Bayley ended up tripping on Tamina, ended up tripping up Tamina. She ended up dragging Tamina into the corner. Ended up taking her leg and whipping Tamina's leg into the ring post. And she did it again. Bayley ended up whipping Tamina's leg into the ring post once again. Bayley ended up delivering a drop kick, which sent Tamina's leg into the ring post. And Bayley ended up going for the cover. Tamina ended up kicking out. And Bayley was just continuing on Tamina's leg. Tamina then ended up landing a headbutt and a splash in the corner, and also a hip attack to Bayley. Bayley ended up getting a knee on Tamina. And then the match went back and forth between the both of them. Bayley ended up rolling out of the ring once again for a breather. And she ended up punching away at Tamina, and she ended up throwing Tamina's head to the ring apron. And Bayley was shown getting a bottle of water. She ended up drinking a little of the water, threw some of the water right in Tamina's face. So we saw Tamina ends up grabbing Bayley, ends up throwing Bayley into the rope, and delivers a lariat to Bayley. So Tamina then ended up whipping Bayley into the barricade, and she ended up launching her over the announce table. So Tamina ended up heading to the top rope. She ended up trying to go for a splash on Bayley. Bayley ended up blocking it. So Tamina went for a super kick and delivered the Samoan drop on Bayley. And Tamina went for the cover, but Sasha ended up climbing her way into the ring. And then Sasha ended up backing away because Tamina ended up seeing her. So Sasha, backed away, wanted nothing to do with Tamina. So Tamina then ended up chasing after Sasha, and Bayley ended up running into Tamina. Tamina then tried to go for another Samoan drop on Bayley. Bayley ended up countering the Samoan drop by winning the match with a roll-up. So there you go. Bayley ended up winning the match, still retaining the Smackdown Women's Championship. But post-match, Tamina ended up trying to take out Bayley, but Bayley ended up fighting her off. Sasha ends up running in to deliver a chop to Tamina, but Tamina ended up kicking Sasha in the face, and then she slapped Sasha in the face, and that was basically that. So Bayley, of course, ended up picking up the win, still retaining the title. All in all, okay match between Tamina and Bayley. So then we went backstage, and Seth Rollins was cutting a promo on Drew McIntyre. Seth ended up saying that McIntyre knows who he is and what he's capable of. He ended up saying that Drew McIntyre understands it's his destiny to win the title and also lead the way. Seth ended up saying that he wants to unburden McIntyre. And he ended up saying that him winning the title will be for the greater good. And Seth Rollins ended up saying, "You need me to be the WWE champion." So that was basically what Seth Rollins had to say. A little promo that Seth Rollins ended up cutting on McIntyre, ahead of their match. So then, after Seth Rollins delivered his promo, we had Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt for the Universal Championship. And the match itself, it was a decent match between the both of them. Of course, you had Mr. Rogers, Bray Wyatt himself, end up coming out for the match. No Fiend. We didn't see the Fiend. So Bray Wyatt came out. He was all smiles. And he ends up saying something to Michael Cole and Corey Graves. So then we had Braun Strowman come out. So Braun Strowman got in the ring, and Bray Wyatt then approached Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman ended up shoving Bray Wyatt back to the corner as the match started. And he ended up saying, somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, which Bray Wyatt ended up saying to Strowman. So Strowman then ended up hitting a chop and a shoulder tackle to Bray Wyatt. And then Bray Wyatt is just chuckling, and he ends up saying, "You are strong." And he ended up saying that while he was laying on the side. Bray Wyatt then ended up delivering a punch and a kick to Strowman, but he ended up getting dropped with a shoulder tackle from Strowman. So Bray Wyatt was out on the floor, and we had Braun Strowman end up charging around the ring, and he looked to take out Bray Wyatt. So Bray Wyatt ended up moving out of the way as Braun Strowman was going to go into Bray Wyatt, but Bray moved out of the way. Strowman ended up crashing into the announce table. So then we saw Huskus the Pig. He was at ringside. He was distracting Braun Strowman. So with Huskus the Pig there, Bray Wyatt ended up hitting a DDT on Strowman on the floor outside. So Bray Wyatt then ended up sending Braun Strowman into the ring. He delivered a clothesline to Strowman, went for the cover. Strowman ended up kicking out of it. Bray Wyatt then ended up hitting a senton. And Bray Wyatt then ended up sending Strowman into the ring steps when they were out on the floor. And Bray Wyatt, on the outside, he was saying, "You made me do it." So Strowman ended up eating a punch, but then got a kick from Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was on the second rope. He ended up hitting a tornado DDT, which looked cool. He also hit the Sister Abigail on Strowman. So Wyatt went for the cover. Strowman ended up kicking out of the Sister Abigail. I'm like, when has somebody ever kicked out of Sister Abigail? I think Strowman might have been the first to kick out of the Sister Abigail. So Strowman ended up dropping Bray Wyatt with a choke slam. So Bray ended up hesitating for a moment, and he ended up delivering a second Sister Abigail. And Strowman was delivering clotheslines in the corner on Bray Wyatt. He then sent Bray Wyatt out of the ring. So Strowman was charging around the ring, sending Bray Wyatt into the barricade. So Bray Wyatt was sent into the ring. He was kicking Strowman back out of the ring. Strowman ended up getting back up. And when we see Strowman get back up, he had his black sheep mask on. The one that he wore when he was with the Wyatt family. So Bray Wyatt ended up laughing. And he ended up saying "It's you." So Strowman ended up getting back into the ring. He ripped off his shirt. Bray Wyatt ended up saying, this time around, things will be perfect. So Strowman was shown dropping to his knees. And he does, the Bray Wyatt taunt. Bray ended up laughing. Strowman ended up standing up, and he accepts Bray Wyatt's hug. And so then we all see the puppets of the Funhouse at ringside, and they are all cheering at what's going on. And so Strowman takes off the mask. Strowman then stomps on the mask, and then he hits the running power slam on Bray Wyatt to score the win. So there you go. Braun Strowman end up winning the match, retaining the Universal Championship. Post-match, you had Bray Wyatt. He was in the corner. He was staring off at Strowman, and we saw images of the Fiend a few times. So it looks like Braun Strowman will be facing the Fiend next, as what WWE is trying to tell us. So this whole feud between Strowman and Bray Wyatt ain't over yet. Strowman's eventually now going to be facing the Fiend, and that will probably take place at the next pay-per-view, which is Backlash, which is happening next month. So we're possibly going to see Strowman versus the Fiend at Backlash. Who knows if WWE will book that, but knowing them, they will. But overall, it was a decent match between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. And then we saw Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins for the WWE Championship. Seth Rollins made his way out, and they gave Seth Rollins new music, I guess, to fit his Messiah gimmick, which the music is fucking awful, in my opinion. Love, his 01 with the, Burn It Down. But I guess he needed a new music change, but it is awful. His new music is absolutely awful, in my opinion. So then Drew McIntyre ended up making his way out, and the match itself, it was a okay match between the both of them. And as the match started, Seth Rollins ended up taking control of the match on McIntyre, and McIntyre ended up picking up the match. He ended up blasting Seth Rollins out of the ring. He took his time getting back in. Seth Rollins ended up taking his time getting back in, and he was giving McIntyre, a chuckle, and he was circling around him. McIntyre ended up delivering some punches and chops to Rollins. Rollins then ended up Rollins was then sent into the turnbuckle and takes a big chop from McIntyre. So Rollins ended up working his way back into the match, ended up delivering a drop kick to McIntyre, sending him out of the ring. And Rollins ended up hitting a suicide dive to McIntyre. And then they both went back into the ring, and Rollins was working on McIntyre with a Boston Crab, which he transitioned into other submission moves to keep McIntyre in the middle of the ring. McIntyre ended up grabbing the bottom rope to break the hold. McIntyre was then out on the floor again. And then Seth Rollins went for another suicide dive to McIntyre. And Rollins ended up delivering a high knee off of the ring apron. And he ended up shouting out, "This is my destiny. It's not about you, Drew." So Rollins ended up delivering another knee to McIntyre's face. So we had Rollins jumping in the ring. He clears off the announce table, and he ended up leaping for a third knee strike to McIntyre. And Rollins went for another suicide dive, but he got caught by McIntyre. McIntyre ended up hitting a overhead suplex, which sent Rollins over the table. So Then we went back to the ring. McIntyre ended up hitting another release suplex, and he did another on Seth Rollins. Rollins then ended up taking a big boot from McIntyre. McIntyre then ended up going to the top rope. He ended up hitting the forearm, and he ended up looking to go for the Claymore, but Rollins ended up rolling out of the ring. Rollins ended up delivering a kick to the face on McIntyre, a springboard, which he didn't get. So McIntyre ended up going for a spine buster, which he went into a jackknife pin on Seth Rollins, went for the cover, but Rollins ended up kicking out. And at the end of the match, you had McIntyre end up hitting the Glasgow kiss to Rollins, and he ended up delivering the headbutt and a super kick, and McIntyre ended up delivering the Claymore to Seth Rollins, and he went for the pin. So there you go. Drew McIntyre ended up winning the match, retaining the WWE Championship. Post-match, you had McIntyre put his hand out for Seth Rollins, and McIntyre ended up telling Seth Rollins, "You're the man, but not this night." So Rollins ended up looking at McIntyre's hand, and Rollins ends up shaking McIntyre's hand. But that was that. Overall, the match itself, it was okay between McIntyre and Seth Rollins. Wasn't a bad match by any means. And then we had Charlie Caruso. Charlie Caruso ended up talking with R-Truth about losing to Bobby Lashley earlier in the night. And Truth ends up saying to Charlie Caruso that he had a great match against MVP and that he picked up the win. So Truth ended up feeling like MVP lost a significant amount of weight, though. Which, that was funny, though. You know, you gotta love R-Truth, man. So Truth ended up wanting to celebrate, and he has nobody to do it with. He has nobody to celebrate with. So he then ends up showing a photo of himself with the Jobber Ninja Turtle 24/7 title. And he ends up saying that he's coming for the title. And he ends up telling Tom Brady to look out because he's coming for that title. Of course, he's talking about Rob Gronkowski because, of course, Rob Gronkowski is going back to the NFL. So, looks like R-Truth is going to be getting back his Jobber Ninja Turtle 24/7 title, which, who gives a shit about that title? Title should be fucking retired already. But that was all that R-Truth had to say. You know, like I said, you gotta love R-Truth. Guy is hilarious. So then we had the main event, which was the Money in the Bank ladder matches, which, as WWE would say, which horrible saying, where it was the most unique Money in the Bank ladder match, which was god awful every time they would say it. But both of the matches end up taking place at the same time at WWE Headquarters, which this was pre-taped, and these matches were live. I think the only match that wasn't live during the pay-per-view was the Braun Strowman Bray Wyatt match, because it didn't say live on it, so it was pre-taped. So yeah, that was the only match that was pre-taped, which was Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt, and also both of the Money in the Bank matches. But I gotta say, I had a lot of fun with both the men and women's Money in the Bank ladder matches. They were pretty fun, but at the same time, it was a clusterfuck with both the men and the women. So the superstars, both men and women superstars, they had to start on the bottom floor of the headquarters, and they had to make their way from the bottom floor all the way up to the roof of the headquarters to capture both the Money in the Bank briefcases. So the women were standing in the lobby of the headquarters, and the men were starting in the gym of the headquarters. And so Asuka ended up showing up above all the women who were in the Money in the Bank ladder match. So the participants in the men and women's Money in the Bank ladder match, for the women, it was Carmella, Dana Brooke, Lacey Evans, Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, and Asuka. And for the men, it was Otis, AJ Styles, Aleister Black, Daniel Bryan, Corbin, and Rey Mysterio. So as the match started, Asuka was shown above all the women. She ended up taking out all of them as the bell rang. Asuka ends up taunting and yelling in Japanese, the go to, as I would say, it's gibberish Japanese. So Asuka ended up taking the elevator. So Asuka ends up getting into the elevator. The doors ended up closing before any of the other women can get to it. The men were battling in the gym. They were pairing off with each other. Corbin was shown grabbing a weight, throws the weight, smashes one of the mirrors. And, this was going, all around. And, there were a couple appearances in this match. We saw Brother Love. Of course, the character ended up playing by Bruce Pritchard, the guy who is ruining Smackdown every Friday night. Comes down and says, "I love you." And Rey Mysterio was there. He ended up saying, "I love you too, but I gotta go." So all the men made their way into the offices. So the elevator ended up opening. 4 guys ended up making their way in. And the women were running up the stairs. And we had Asuka end up dodging Shayna Baszler, but Baszler ended up catching her run away. And Aleister ended up noticing an opening, and he runs off. Daniel Bryan ended up doing some yes kicks, and Otis was doing the yes chant, and he was laying some. Daniel Bryan was laying some kicks on Aleister Black, and so Daniel Bryan then ended up running off, and now we see Doink the Clown popping up from behind the chair. Very random. Doink the Clown popping up from behind the chair. So Carmella was then thrown into an office by Nia Jax. So Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler end up facing off. Shayna Baszler ended up throwing some forearms, and she ends up getting run over. Dana Brooke ended up taking a chair shot to Nia's back. And then Dana Brooke ends up seeing a briefcase that said Money in the Bank on it. She ends up taking it, but it's not the right, of course, briefcase. So then Stephanie McMahon shows up. She ends up telling Dana Brooke that the real briefcase is on the roof. So Carmella then ended up grabbing one of her photos that were hanging on the wall. And she ends up smashing it over Dana Brooke's head. So Carmella then ends up moonwalking out of the office, and she eats a woman's right from Lacey Evans. And then we cut to AJ Styles. And AJ Styles was looking for Rey Mysterio. Styles then ended up bumping into a photo of The Undertaker that was on the wall. So Styles ended up opening the door, and it had blue lights and also a casket in it. So we flash back to the Boneyard match, clips of the Boneyard match from WrestleMania. Styles ended up getting freaked out. And then he ended up eating a kick from Alistair. So he then shuts the door on Styles. And Styles was yelling, "No!" And so then we cut to Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman was at a buffet. He was at catering. And there was tons of food around him. So he ends up going to eat the food. Everyone goes running into the room. And we had a good old food fight. So Otis then ended up yelling, "Food fight." And he launches a plate into Paul Heyman's face. So Dana Brooke ended up running into the room. She was still wearing the photo that Carmella smashed over her head. And the food fight ended up beginning, the classic food fight. Baszler was shown choking out Rey Mysterio. Nia and Otis squash Mysterio. Nia Jax ended up powerbombing Carmella through a table. And Otis ends up going into another room that had food in it. And he sees some pies that were there. So John Laurinaitis ended up showing up. Of course, in his electric cart. And he says, "People power." You know, with the whole people power thing that John Laurinaitis did back in 2012, around there, which that was god awful. At that time, we couldn't even stand John Laurinaitis on TV. But he ended up saying, "People power." So Otis ended up smashing a pie in John Laurinaitis' face. The janitor was shown mopping up the floor. And Asuka ends up yelling for where the roof is. So then we had Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles end up in Vince McMahon's office. And they finally realize that Vince is there. So Vince's music ends up playing. And he ends up yelling, "Out," to both Daniel Bryan and Styles. And I don't know if any of you saw, Vince, but didn't you all think Vince didn't look too good here? Which, in my opinion, Vince didn't even look, too good here. By the way, how he looked. I don't know if any of you actually, seen that. So Daniel Bryan and Styles end up going to leave. And Vince ended up putting some hand sanitizer on himself. Goes back to doing what he does. Going back to work. So Styles ended up saying that Daniel Bryan acted like a real coward. Daniel Bryan ended up saying AJ warned to put the chairs back. And they started fighting again. So Corbin ended up joining the fight with Styles and Daniel Bryan. And Corbin ended up saying that he's going to the roof. And so then we see Asuka and Nia Jax. They made their way to the roof. where the ring was, along with the briefcases. And I liked how the way when they were on the roof, the style of the filming that they did, where it was like a helicopter or a drone view of the ring and of the roof of the WWE headquarters. Very well shot, in my opinion. I thought of how it looked. And Asuka and Nia Jax were there. Lacey Evans ended up joining the fight. She ended up dropping Asuka. Nia Jax ended up finding a way to get a ladder set up in the ring. Asuka was then stopping her through. Nia Jax ended up sending her into the ladder. Lacey Evans ended up delivering the woman's right on Nia Jax. Lacey Evans ended up heading up to yank the briefcase, but Lacey Evans was then yanked off of the ladder by Asuka. Asuka then ended up throwing the ladder down on Nia Jax. And in the end, you had Corbin end up climbing up the ladder. He ends up arguing with Asuka. Asuka ends up slapping and kicking Corbin off the ladder. So Asuka is then able to retrieve the briefcase. So there you go. Asuka ends up winning the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. So that's awesome. That's cool. So then the men's Money in the Bank was still continuing. Otis ended up heading into the ring to battle on Corbin. Corbin ended up hitting him with the ladder. Otis ended up hitting the caterpillar to Corbin. And then Rey Mysterio and Aleister Black, they end up climbing the ladder. Styles end up shoving the ladder over. And Corbin ends up getting back up. And he ends up throwing Rey Mysterio off the edge of the headquarters. So Mysterio ended up going off the edge of the headquarters. And Corbin ended up doing the same thing to Aleister Black. Aleister Black also went off the edge of the headquarters. And there was loud thuds for both Mysterio and Black. Loud thud sound effects. So Otis and Styles end up battling it in the ring. Styles then end up hitting the phenomenal forearm to Otis. Styles end up climbing back up. And Corbin also was climbing the ladder. They were battling over the briefcase. And both Styles and Corbin unhooked the briefcase at the same time. And Elias ends up showing up. He ends up whacking Corbin over the back with his guitar. So Styles end up ripping away at the briefcase. He was fumbling the briefcase, and it falls, and Otis ends up catching it. So with Otis catching the briefcase, he wins the Money in the Bank ladder match for the men. You know, Styles could have won it, but he fumbled over the briefcase, and it landed, and Otis ended up catching it. So I wasn't expecting Otis to win the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, but it is awesome. I mean, they're pushing Otis big here, you know, with his relationship with Mandy Rose, and now WWE giving him the Money in the Bank, the men's Money in the Bank briefcase. And with this, with Otis win the men's Money in the Bank, you could tell that heavy machinery is no more. And you kind of feel bad for Tucker Knight now. But, you know, everybody is claiming that Tucker is now the new Mario Jannetty because of what Otis is doing with his relationship with Mandy, and now him winning the men's Money in the Bank. But who knows now with this what WWE might do with Tucker. Maybe Tucker is going to be catering now, or maybe, just maybe, I know I may be wrong in this, but this is a prediction. Maybe with Otis winning the men's Money in the Bank and his relationship with Mandy, will this make WWE turn Tucker heel on Otis? Who knows? I mean, that's my prediction. You know, they possibly might not do it though, but you know, I could sense that happening. Having Tucker turn heel on Otis, I could eventually see possibly WWE doing that. But so there you go. Asuka wins the women's Money in the Bank, and Otis wins the men's Money in the Bank, which was very unexpected. And after the match was over, Otis ended up bumping the ladder. Styles ended up going off of it. And Otis yelled out, "Yo, Mandy, I did it." And that was how Money in the Bank went off the air. Went off at like 9:24. So good for WWE for ending the pay-per-view early. Thank God it didn't go over 3 hours. So if they keep on doing this and going off the air early, that's pretty good. So I hope WWE keeps doing that, you know, with their pay-per-views and not making them feel long and over 3 hours. You know. But yeah, so that was Money in the Bank. It was an entertaining show, but wasn't a great show by any means, though. So anyways, that's it for my review of this year's Money in the Bank. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. And definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And I will see you all tomorrow night with the Monday Night Raw review. So, see you all tomorrow night.